Kakalosh Boker Tov, we're continuing with halachot. This is in Perek Vav in Pirkei Avot Mishnah Tet. We're talking about now Tehilim. In the Mishnah it says, V'chen katuv b'sefer Tehilim al yedei David HaMelech Yisrael. Interestingly enough, it says that's what's written in the Sefer Tehilim, which was written through David Melech Yisrael. And the Midrash Shemuel already asks, the entire Lashon is miutar. The entire thing just doesn't make sense. Since when do we see anywhere in the Gemara or anywhere where it's written, this is a pasuk, and the pasuk is based upon HaTehilim, which was written by David Melech Yisrael. So he says, וכתב שהמשנה רצתה ללמדנו, שכל מה שאמר דוד המלך עליו שלום לא אמרו כנגד עצמו בלבד. He comes and he says, when David HaMelech came and he wrote something in the Tehilim, he actually wrote it on himself, who didn't say it only about himself, but rather כנגד כל ישראל. And that's why it's written called Sefer Tehilim, כי כל אדם חייב להלל ולשבח להשם יתברך, which means he didn't only say it about himself, he said about every single Jew, that every single Jew has an obligation to come and to praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why it's called the Sefer Tehilim. So it's brought down in the Likutei Moharan, and he says like this, עיקר אמירת תהילים לומר כל מזמורי התהילים על עצמו. The main part of saying Tehilim is to say it about yourself. למצוא את עצמו בתוך כל מזמור מזמור, which means that when you're saying a perek of Tehilim, you're actually finding yourself in that perek of Tehilim. And it's brought down, he said, so how do you do this exactly? So he answered and he said like this, כל המלחמות שביקש דוד המלך עליו השלום שיצילהו השם יתברך מהם, הכל צריכים לפרש לעצמו על מלחמת היצרה וחילותיו. Anytime that he's talking about a war, he was really speaking about the Yetzirah against him. That's what was happening. Just like you see in the other Mizmorim. So they say, okay, fine. So then how do you explain that in the Psukim? He says, David HaMelech Alav Shalom was saying, Shabena Nashiki Chasidani, or other things like that. So he says also, צריכים לדון אותו את עצמו לכף זכות, ולמצוא בעצמו איזה זכות ונקודה טובה, וכן בכל דבר ודבר ימצא את האדם את עצמו. Which means that even when he was coming and saying something positive, it means that we have to look at ourselves positively. Because many times what happens is that a person comes and they only look at themselves negative. So therefore what happens is that when David HaMelech came and he saw Shaminana Shiki Chasidani or other psukim like that which are talking about his praises, they were actually showing us that we also have to look at our praises as well. However, though the Balatanya comes and he says, שכיוון שאין כל אדם יכול לומר כל תיבת ספר תהילים על עצמו, so he says, you can't come and actually refer to the entire Tehilim on yourself. Because he says, for example, Manim letzul chikishu sheker mizmanenu, right? Or Mahavti Toratecha. He comes and he says, therefore David HaMelech comes and he says that if somebody's going to come and is going to say Tehilim, it's ki'ilu laman negaim va'alot, shegam elchoteim en shavim bakol, v'alomeh ba'em mekabel tzachar. So therefore he comes and he says the Balatanya, not like the Likutei Moharan. The Likutei Moharan was saying that when we are saying Tehilim, we are actually speaking about ourselves. Every single perek of Tehilim is speaking about ourselves. However, though, the Balatanya comes and he says, no, that it doesn't mean that you're speaking about yourself. There's a lot of times that we come and we say, when we're going to say, Mahavti Toratecha, do you really love the Torah? Do you love the Torah like exercise? Do you love the Torah like food? Do you love the Torah like everything that you're doing? So obviously, if the answer is that it's not going to be so, because we see that it's not true, so how do we speak about ourselves then? So rather the Balatanya comes and he says, David HaMelech asked that when we're going to be coming and learning Torah, what we're actually doing is that he asked that we should get a special sachar, just like we're learning ahalot and negaim. We don't have negaim and ahalot nowadays, but we're still going to receive a reward for it, for learning it. So the same thing when we're going to be reading Tehilim. And the same thing is brought down in the name of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and Alichot Shlomo, that in Amirat Sefer Tehilim, en lechaver pirush ha'inyan kipshuto. Right? You shouldn't just come and start thinking it just like explicitly the way that it's written over there. That when you say Esayna el harim, right, yichaver al atzmo, mishum diikar ma'alat Amirat Tehilim al pi hapshat, hu mishum Talmud Torah. He says when you're coming and you're learning the Tehilim, you're reading the Tehilim, you're just learning Torah. That's all that you're doing. Shekorev lomer pirkei Tehilim shehem מכתבי הקודש, ובתוך לזה לחשוק לדבקות השם, that you want to cling to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and this zechut is going to be on the person in itself. Now the Sefer HaChinuch brings down that הזכירו לומר מזמונים אלו שיש בהם דברים יראו הנפש שיודע אותם, לחשוב בהשם ולשים בו כל מבטחו. It's in order to awaken us to put our bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when we're talking about the greatness of Tehilim, Yalkut Shimoni in the Midrash Shochatov says, David HaMelech Alav Shalom said, Yiyu leratzon mifi v'yigol lefnecha Hashem tzuri v'goali. He says, Yihi ratzon shiyu konim b'mizmonei Tehilim, והוגים במזמורי תהילים, ונוצלים שכר עליהם כרגעים ועלות, which means that David HaMelech wanted that it should be considered like learning Torah. And the Mimarki the mot of the Rav Chidai brings out the name of Rabbeinu Ephraim al Torah. Shechol haomer Tehilim b'chol yom kilu kiyem kol Torah kula. It's like that you're fulfilling the entire Torah as well. Obviously, it's not going to be the exact level of learning Torah, but it is going to be very, very important. However, we'll just finish off by bringing down the Nefesh HaChaim. And the Nefesh HaChaim comes and he says, "Shema David HaMelech yitpalel she'amyatem yiyu kilimud negaim va'alot." It's mashma that obviously the esek bilchot b'shas biyun v'giyah hu inyan yotev na'ala ve'ahul lefanav yibarach. That means obviously you can never compare really Tehilim to Limud Torah. Nobody will ever tell you, you know what, instead of learning today, I'm going to open up a book of Tehilim and I'm going to learn Tehilim. It doesn't work like that, right? And we don't know if HaKadosh Baruch Hu even agreed to this. However, though, right, a person should be careful that obviously it's a lower level, right, than learning Torah. And the Shra Kadosh actually says, it's like you're doing tefillah. And it's also brought down in the Shoresh Avodah. So therefore, obviously, whenever we're talking about Talmud Torah has a higher level, obviously, than saying Tehilim. But Tehilim is very, very important. That's what David HaMelech actually asked, that a person should come and say Tehilim. But just to finish off, though we got a very big machloka between the Acharonim, how are we supposed to take the perspective towards looking at the Tehilim? Are we speaking towards ourselves, and that was the Likutei Moharan? Or is that going to be that really we're not speaking towards ourselves, we're learning the Tehilim, or we're reading the Tehilim in order to cling to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Ikar of the Sachar of the reading of the Tehilim is that we're just coming closer to the Ribono Shel Olam, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it has nothing to do with that we're applying ourselves to every single perek of Tehilim.